Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and you got to start here. Look at this from Dark Defender. Daily is still oversold for XRP, and he is coming to break at 58 cents. I know the weekly is not as good as the daily chart, but strangely, the whatever that is resistance is around 60. Oh God, I'm eager to see a dollar where the dance will begin. The ignition, $1.76 above is Mars. So ignition begins at $1, Mars 176, or moon, whatever the case may be. Sounds good to me. JP Morgan says the recent sell-off in Bitcoin and crypto is likely near to an end. Does that mean that they have now finished buying the dip that the government that's in their pocket created? I think, hold on a sec. This is what I wanted to show you next. This is Gregory Marinero, and he's talking about the petrodollar and the BRICS and how this will affect the United States. Pay attention, folks.
Yesterday, I explained to you, or we spoke about how these oil-rich nations are now making alliances with the BRICS nations. Okay. A lot of you seem to be downplaying the significance of this. I did read through the comments. Do you understand that the US dollar is the world reserve currency because of one reason? That is the petrodollar. The United States has guaranteed to protect the oil of OPEC nations. And why would they do that? Well, so the petrodollar would exist. The petrodollar, because of the assurance to OPEC nations or oil-rich nations that the U.S. military would protect that oil, they have priced their oil in dollars. Okay, if that goes away, the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency goes away. And instead of the United States exporting its inflation to the rest of the world, you haven't seen anything yet with regard to inflation. The way of life that you've come to know here in the United States, which is quickly evaporating anyway, unless, of course, you're in the upper echelon of society, is going to change, and I mean change very, very rapidly. You have to look at the global stage. I am a macro guy, all right? I do focus on the small things too, but for the most part, it's the macro picture that I kind of focus on. The fact that these oil-rich nations are now joining the BRICS is a direct threat to the petrodollar system and the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. This should be very, very obvious. And what is going to lead to? Suffering, pain, death, and war. And more than likely a black swan event or some outlying thing. Who knows what they're going to do to us, but they have a lot more in store for us, again, as we go from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. That's how we function these days. Can't have anything normal anymore.
I mean, everything he said there is correct. I've been saying this for a long time. It's the petrodollar, folks. It's for all the marbles. That's what we're talking about. I believe in my gut that this was planned a long time ago, and that there's a plan in place to have some type of a shared reserve currency. It's what makes sense. It's what I would do. If I was the president of the United States, you can't really count the guy that's president right now because I don't even know if he knows where he is. But if I was president of the United States, I would have gone to Russia, China, and all the other countries, Saudi Arabia, and I would have sat down in a room and said, let's work out. I know we can't, we've squandered the world reserve currency status with our debt and our overspending and all the stuff, and we got rid of the gold standard. We've squandered it. And so let's all come up with a peaceful way forward for the next 100 or 200 years. I believe that peaceful way forward involves gold and XRP. You may not believe that, but that's okay. Now, I believe it also involves replacing SWIFT. Watch this.
But it's not true that SWIFT is really used as to... SWIFT never closed the country. So you could think of that, but they're closing sanctioned banks. So they're preventing sanctioned institutions to use the network. Like anybody, like any banks cannot do business, or any corporates cannot do business with a sanctioned entity.
So it's more like you turned off a specific node.
Yes.
You didn't actually turn off, let's say, a geographic cluster.
Yeah, the whole country.
Yeah.
So that's important to make a difference. But will CBDC has an impact on SWIFT as it exists today? Yes, it will. That's one of the reasons why I left SWIFT, by the way, because I think that if they don't get their act together, they might be disappearing, a bit like Kodak in the 80s. So yes, they definitely
fighting words there.
So there will be an impact on companies like SWIFT, but also on credit card companies like MasterCard and Visa, and that's why they have a big interest in that technology, because they know that it will have an impact on them.
And they are enabling crypto payments, or at least to purchase crypto with Visa.
And in crypto, we have now travel rules.
Now, let me remind you all of something. This is Brad Garlinghouse at the Economic Club of New York. Okay, I don't think just anybody gets in there. That is Liz Clayman that's interviewing him. Now, remember, but this is how you know there's a lot going on that's not necessarily above board. Liz Clayman has been having Charles Gasparino on her show ever since the Ripple lawsuit ended, to basically bash Ripple and try to downplay the significance of the Ripple case. There was a day when Liz Clayman was having Brad Garlinghouse on, having John Deaton on. There's a reason that they won't have John Deaton on to tell the Ripple side of the story. You don't see them having Brad Garlinghouse on. But that's not the whole reason I wanted to show you this. This is Brad Garlinghouse talking about SWIFT and how significant it is, but I also just wanted to make the point about there's a reason. I don't know who's gotten to these people, but there's a reason you're seeing Fox now towing a completely different line.
You know, when I joined Ripple, we were a small company. It was about 4.5 years ago, and there were 3 use cases the company was focused on. One was a smart contracts platform called Codius, using the XRP ledger. The second was a company, kind of a project called Global Identity, and the third was the payments thing. My view was we had to focus.
Global Identity. That sounds like Greg Kidd, right? Global ID.
And choose one, and if we were lucky with that one over a period of years, maybe we'd get the opportunity to do number 2 or number 3 or number 4. I don't look back. I mean, given what has transpired, one could argue that we should have focused more on smart contracts and what happened with the Ethereum network. I don't regret that. I think the payments, like, you have north of $20 trillion going cross-border each year. It is fraught with error rates, and it's slow, it's expensive. For me, it's a classic, like Silicon Valley going up against the big behemoth Goliath, but it's so broken. I mean, when I go talk to banks, it's a beautiful thing for me, because banks don't like SWIFT. They're frustrated with SWIFT. Their customers don't like SWIFT. And that's a great place to be when you're selling into that. So do I think there's other vertical use cases, and maybe if I went back, could we do it differently? Yeah, sometimes I wonder that, but I also think we have been so fortunate through a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill that we find ourselves with a lot of momentum in, I think, really solving a problem using these technologies at scale.
What was the figure he used?
And there were 3 use cases: Codius, using the XRP, kind of a project called Global Identity, and the third was the payments thing. My view was we had to focus and choose one, and if we were lucky with that one over a period of years, maybe we'd get the opportunity to do number 2 or number 3 or number 4. I don't look back. I mean, given what has transpired, one could argue that we should have focused more on smart contracts and what happened with the Ethereum network. I don't regret that. I think the payments, like, you have north of $20 trillion going cross-border each year.
North of 20 trillion dollarinis. That's why we're all here. This is the video I put out earlier. I wanted to show this. John Deaton's responding to it. We're talking about the witnesses for a potential trial with Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson. John Deaton says, Hinman definitely gets to testify. Normally, you'd have no chance at being able to subpoena a former chairman for trial, but here the SEC stupidly chose to bring aiding and abetting charges against the CEO, Brad Garlinghouse. Ironically, it was Clayton who wanted to sue the executives personally in a non-fraud case. But the reason they have a great shot of getting Clayton is because he met with Garlinghouse and Joel Katz, David Schwartz. In that meeting, Garlinghouse spoke out in frustration. Ripple is living in purgatory after the Hinman speech. Clayton nor Hinman responded that XRP was a security. Clayton is a fact witness that helps offer state of mind evidence. Oopsies. Check this out. I forgot to go over this. Charles Gasparino had tweeted this. Scoop. Elon Musk continues to have conversations with top Wall Street executives on the future of X. Seems to be settling, they tell me, on a new-fangled payment system, updated version of PayPal. It will offer low transactions costs as opposed to credit cards and monetize user info. Then we've got this. You know how we're all worried about private keys and writing down all these 24 words and all of that stuff? It's not going to be that way in the future. Biometric authentication. This is from Blockstars with David Schwartz.
So one of the obstacles to cryptocurrency adoption has got to be the user experience. Things like keeping keys secure, worrying about losing devices. Paulo, do you think these new identity solutions can help with the cryptocurrency user experience?
Absolutely. I think they can be a game changer there because you're correct. If I have a cryptographic key, as the average users, am I going to lose this? Am I going to forget the password that protects the key? Is the drive on which this key is stored going to break at some point tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now? Right. So the way we think this problem should be addressed is by having a secure and privacy-preserving way to manage these keys remotely. Effectively, what we have is that the user can unlock and reconstruct their keys at any time by showing their biometric and by doing some cryptographic processing on that biometric information. You can lose your face. You can probably not lose your fingerprints. So that's one problem that users don't have. Not only that, you can't really forget how to use a system that only requires you to show your face to it or to put a fingerprint a finger on a fingerprint scanner. So it's easier to use. It's easier to learn how to use it. There is a much smaller barrier to entry. I mean, think about showing your face to a camera rather than writing down 12 random words on a piece of paper that then you also have to think where you're going to store it and are you going to trust the place where you're going to store it and so on. So I think that the barrier to entry is much lower. The ease of use is much higher. The reliability of a system like this is much higher. So we think that could be something that can change things significantly.
I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. I don't know, biometric authentication, maybe. Thanks for listening.